Welcome to our final Saturday Salon at Centaur online in 2020. What a year it's been. First of all, I want to acknowledge the privilege that it is to live and work on the island of Montreal, which is considered the traditional territory of the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation and has been a point of creativity and exchange for millennia for Indigenous peoples from across Turtle Island. This week, we are again welcoming two artists who were supposed to be part of the 2021 season at Centaur and who have been working hard this fall to prepare a brand new documentary theater collaboration between Centaur Theatre and Théâtre d'aujourd'hui called Cyclorama. And newsflash, it is what we will open the 21-22 season with. We are really so excited about it. Laurence Dauphinais is the brilliant creative architect of this deep dive into the parallel theatrical histories of Montreal's two solitudes. A graduate of l'École nationale du théâtre and Concordia University, she is a celebrated actor, director, musician, and writer whose work has been featured on television and film and in theaters across Montreal and around the world. Most recently, her co-creation and direction of Alapi won the Playwrights Prize at Théâtre d'aujourd'hui and is scheduled to set out on an international tour in the near future. Her combined creative talents come together with her passion for documentary theater in this dynamic hybrid about our very own city of Montreal. Laurence has collaborated on Cyclorama with two theater scholars, Erin Hurley of McGill University and Alexandre Cadieux from UQAM, as well as our other guest today, who is the wonderful actor Antoine Yared, who was last on our stage here at Centaur as Thomas Seymour in Kate Hennig's thrilling historical fiction about Catherine Parr called The Last Wife. Antoine is a graduate of the Dawson College Theatre School and has spent 8 seasons at the acclaimed Stratford Festival Theatre, where he has played a wide variety of roles, including a memorable turn as Romeo in 2016. Since then, he has worked across Canada and North America in a variety of projects, including 1,000 Splendid Suns at the Arena Stage in Washington, Indecent with Seattle Rep, and A Christmas Carol at Soul Pepper in Toronto. Welcome. Come on in.
Hey.
How are you? It's
good.
So nice to see
Very
you.
Very good, thanks.
Got
Likewise.
Through all of my introducing this.
Yeah.
So I want to start first of all with you, Laurence. What have you have been working on Cyclorama all fall, and you've also been working on a new show for FTA. But you also, this isn't your first show for FTA, right? That you're doing now.
No, actually, I co-created Siri with Maxime Carbonneau, which was premiered at FTA in 2015. And that was basically a dialogue between Siri, the artificial intelligence on the iPhone, and me. So
wow.
We basically co-wrote the show with her.
Oh, fantastic. I think there we have the, and so that's beautiful. What a beautiful, who did the design for that? It's absolutely gorgeous.
Geneviève Lisotte did the set and Julie Bass the lights.
Oh, that's Julie Bass did lights for us for Mob earlier at the end of last season. And Antoine, last time you and I were together was for The Last Wife. I think
that's
we
right.
have some images from that show. I think that our young Edward is now about 55 and going to AA. No. Yes.
Been a tough year.
Yeah. There's the wonderful Diana Donnelly and you together.
Yeah.
And I think is there one that was it? That was the two we have of that. What else have you been up to though? I mean, aside from everybody learning how to do theater on Zoom and do.
Yeah, there's been a lot of Zooming, right?
Yeah.
Apart from, rehearsing Cyclorama with Laurence for 5 really incredible weeks, the last theater venture I had was almost a year ago. I was in Washington, D.C. at the Arena Stage doing a 4th remount of 1,000 Splendid Suns based on the novel of Khalid Hosseini. And we closed that show March 1st, and I got back to Montreal March 2nd, and then the world changed. Yeah.
Well, since the pandemic has happened, I've actually had the luck to get to see you again in Romeo and Juliet because they broadcast it from Stratford.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And with the beautiful Sarah Farb. Oh, such a great production. Was that a wonderful part to play?
It really was. It was sort of a best case scenario, getting to do that show with Sarah, who's a very dear friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
She's got a lot of real estate in my heart. So getting to experience that with her was great. And the cast and the director, the whole situation was really fantastic. It was quite memorable, and not a part that I ever thought that I would play. So it was all a bit of a surprise. And yeah.
That's fantastic. And I think that we have an image from John Gabriel Borkman, the Ibsen that you did at Stratford. Was that
That's
the
right.
same season? Oh,
Was
I
that
love that
the same
play.
season? No, that was not the same season. That was the previous season.
Uh-huh.
And that was, I met Carrie Perloff, the director of that show, that season, and she's the one who brought me on to do 1,000 Splendid Suns in the US. We had worked together on John Gabriel and hit it off, and she's great.
Oh, it's fantastic. So I want to talk now. The reason I wanted you guys to come on is because literally the next thing that will be on stage at Centaur is going to be this wonderful creation, Cyclorama. And it is a very unusual thing for us. I mean, in the past, we have done bilingual plays. We did the wonderful Balconville from David Fenario, but I wanted to ask you a little bit about how this all, like, I mean, it all came out of a kind of crazy set of conversations that Laurence and Sylvain and I had 2 summers ago. Is that right now?
I guess so.
Yeah. Yeah. And where we were just saying, why are we all so far apart all the time? Mm-hmm. And what can we do to look into that? Not necessarily fix it, but examine it as what's the source of it. And so we came to you, Laurence, because of your experience and interest in documentary theater. And then you immediately said, oh, I think we need Antoine. And so can you talk a little bit about what's your relationship, the two of you? How do you know each other?
We actually met in high school.
Yeah.
And it's kind of blurry in my mind, but I think that my mom, who's also an actress, and was directing the teachers at the school in a play. The teachers did 1 play a year, and we students were kind of there to help out. So we were backstage. We were doing other things, and Antoine and I were involved in the production. I think that's when we met.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So was that at what high school?
Regina Assumpta.
So that was in French. So you guys met in French.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was it still is a high school run by nuns. And it used to be an all-girls school, but my year was the first mixed cohort.
Wow.
Laurence was a year ahead. And I knew of her. But then we met again years later, doing As You Like It with Repercussion Theater, Shakespeare in the Park.
Oh my goodness. Oh, there
you go.
I swear you guys look younger now than you did then.
I was the one on the right.
Oh my God.
Look at that stash.
Yes.
Yeah, I shaved that for today's presentation.
And so crazily, you both went to high school in French, and then you ended up out of theater, and you went to theater school in French, but you went to theater school, Antoine, in English. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I did the Dawson program, and then I went to Concordia for another 4 years in theater performance. In English. I mean, I studied in French until high school was over, and then I decided to do the switch. Not knowing that I would go into theater. I wanted to be a fashion designer or a graphics designer, and then a year into CJEP, I was already at Dawson, and I came across their theater program, and I wasn't really sure what it was about. I thought it was like acting, but also camera work. I really hadn't done my research, but I auditioned without telling anyone, just like for fun. And then I was accepted, and then I told my parents.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. And they were like, "What?" Yeah.
Cut to Romeo.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. And for you, Laurence, what took you to Shakespeare in the Park in English? Like, what was that from?
Well, I was obsessed. I wanted to work in English. I actually studied at Concordia first for theater and music. And then I decided to switch because I wanted a program that was more conservatory style. But I auditioned at the National Theatre School in English first.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I didn't get in. And then I auditioned in French and I got in. So it was it was really I had this impression that working in English would be like a passport to other things, to work elsewhere. I was really I've always been a big traveler. I was attracted to an other place, to what I didn't know, to the unfamiliar. And I also had a fantasy to work with the best talent. And of course, when you're young, what do you see? You see Hollywood movies and you associate greatness with the language you hear.
Yeah.
So I was very much a product of my culture and of being a North American young woman. And then I got into École Nationale de Théâtre on the French side, and I really discovered what was theater and what was theater creation, and what was the history of theater in Quebec, and how it existed also within the international circuit of theater creation. And that changed my life, basically.
Amazing. That's wonderful. So that's a great segue actually into Cyclorama and into the process of creating this piece. So, I mean, I think normally at Centaur, we, for the most part, put on plays that are written in advance. Then we go into rehearsal and we rehearse them, and then we put on the show. But this process has been quite a bit different. Can you talk a little bit about how you approached creating? Because it's a piece. Is it fair to say it's a piece of documentary theater?
Yeah, I would call it that. Yeah.
And so what was the process for that, aside from convincing Antoine to come and join you to play?
Well, at first, when Sylvain Bélanger and you approached me for this project, it was very obvious in my mind that the sheer co-production itself was a great event, that it was something extremely rare, because the two sides don't really mix in theater in Montreal. And so I was like, let's talk about that. And because I thought it was, so yeah, that's how we decided to go into this documentary research. But I don't think it was what was planned from the start, but to me, it just felt like it was the right thing to do. And then I was like, okay, so the best way to get to know about theater history would be to ask professors. And I knew that Alexandre Cadieux was actually a professor at UQAM. For me, when I graduated from NTS, I went to UQAM to finish my bachelor, and he taught me the history of the theater in Quebec. And he's also a great performer. He does improv in the LNI. So he came to mind right away. He introduced me to Erin Hurley, which was great because we needed an alter ego from the English community. And then I thought, but to be really fair in the process, I think I also need an alter ego that would come from a different reality than mine completely, and where our two history and visions could collide. And I thought of Antoine right away because I loved working with him in As You Like It. I think he's a great actor, and I followed his career. I went to see him at Stratford. I think he's a very brilliant, very funny guy, and he had evolved in such a different, theatrical culture than me, and I thought that was so interesting.
It's funny because you're both Francophone. I mean, Antoine, you grew up in French and Arabic. You were born in Lebanon, is that right?
That's right. I was born in Lebanon, and we emigrated to Canada, to Montreal, when I was 5 years old. But I grew up speaking French and Arabic at home. Those were the two languages that we spoke interchangeably. And it's so funny because I never considered myself Francophone. I spoke French, but I'm Lebanese, and I grew up in Canada. I grew up in Montreal. I grew up in Quebec. So the sort of cultural identity that is sort of connected to the language that you speak is something that I discovered in Canada, and it always felt weird to have that sort of insinuated or implied or tacked on, because people say, yeah, you're Francophone, you're French, but I'm like, no, I'm Lebanese, I'm Arabic, whatever. So yeah, I spoke French, I spoke Arabic, and now I speak English.
That's amazing, and yeah. I think you've hit on something really important that actually you do explore in the show, which is this idea of the difference between the two communities of theater being defined by their language, or we think they're defined by their language, but in fact it's more complicated than that, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And how did you discover, like, was that a discovery, or was that something that you looked for in the process?
Are you asking me?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Or yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, it was always very obvious to me that the two different communities had very different styles. Mm-hmm. And I think, one can explain that in so many different ways. First of all, we are always our inspirations, and we are also what we reject. And I think that because of historical reasons, Francophone Quebec has been more tied to Europe than to the rest of North America. So our inspirations come from Western Europe. They come from France, Belgium, what happens in Germany, and all of those types of theater that has done a cut with, let's say, traditional narrative. It's called post-dramatic theater. So what does that mean? What does that mean about telling a story? When it comes to the rest of North America, they're still very much into the more Anglophone tradition of storytelling. So they're more in relation with what happens still in the United States, Canada, and England, or Great mm-hmm. Britain. So a more traditional form of storytelling, dramatic theater, basically.
Right, and narrative, and sort of a straight ahead narrative, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So in this process of examining all these different things, one of the things I know that you did was you actually, in addition to all the research, you also got into some improv in the process, right? To kind of tease out different little theater, different threads of the information. And so, Antoine, can you talk about that just a little bit? I know that was, I remember, well, it becomes a part of the show, but can you just talk about how that all came about for you? And you're on mute, so you need to unmute.
Yeah, okay. Well, when Laurence reached out and invited me to be part of this project, I just sort of I said yes, not really knowing what was involved in. But I had
the first rule of improv.
Yeah, basically just say yes and then deal with it. So yeah, before we had those 5 weeks of rehearsals, we had a week of a workshop where Laurence had devised a series of improvised conversations and topics to improvise and talk about. And so we did a lot of that during that week, talking about our shared histories, our own personal histories, where we grew up and how we came to be actors. We played around with music and through the games that we played, we started embodying different opinions to create a bit of drama, to create a bit of tension, to see what could come out. And I mean, that was interesting to speak for a community, to speak for a language when I feel like I'm a multitude, and it was really tricky sometimes to just like stick to a point of view, and just so that you could actually come up with what are some of the preconceived notions that one community might have towards the other, some misconceptions, some stereotypes. So yeah, it was interesting. And then what was really funny is weeks later, when we started rehearsing, is seeing how those improvised conversations, debates, made their way into the play and became the lines that I get to speak and that Laurence gets to say. And it's been a really interesting process for me, because that was the first, and it really, I felt really challenged at times, because we play ourselves mostly in the show. Antoine and Laurence are in the show. We put on costumes and we portray different people, but essentially we're ourselves speaking for others, and I found that really tricky to have to play myself. And Laurence had to remind me that she's like, yeah, you're playing yourself, but it's still a dramatic form, and it's still theater, so there is artistic license that's happening here, and there's elbow room for a difference of opinions between Antoine the person and Antoine in the show.
Yeah, there's a great quote from a German expressionist. I can't remember who it is, but he said, "The flesh has its own spirit, and art is knowing what to leave out." And so there's a kind of like this hybridization of, and so it must be really interesting. Laurence, have you played yourself on stage before?
Yeah, often.
Yeah.
So for me, it was I was surprised actually by Antoine's reaction. I wasn't expecting it, because for me, it's just been part of my practice so much. And it's like when we wrote Siri, of course I'm myself, but I don't fall in love with my phone for real. Like there's such a construction. Everything is a construction in life, even when you're called your own name, and we construct things in reality all the time too. Just look at social networks, for example. So for me, it was very, it was just that. It was a continuation of a practice, and it was super interesting to understand like where Antoine was coming from, and to try to explain why it was still a construction, a dramatic construction, and to have these reflections on truth and lies and representation and all of these things. Yeah. So but I found it was so interesting to work with improv in the process, because our own my light just died, our own personal histories feed so greatly into, I don't know if I can say that, but into the writing. It's like it feeds what I'm trying to say with the play. And we are both very hybrid people. So we have these opinions that are maybe ingrained deep down into us, but in reality, we make a lot of paradoxical choices and a lot of very complex choices. And we talk about that too in the play, just by the fact that we both speak the two languages and we both live in the two languages in such a fluid manner, that says a lot about ourselves. So, it's interesting to see that, there is this hybridity, but at the same time, there is this construction because of the cultures that we grew up in. Right. And how can we shed light on that? And how can we then realize what we're made of and decide to potentially transform ourselves or not?
Well, and that's wonderful that you say that, because I think that's also speaks to what Antoine was saying earlier, that in English, there is such a diversity of identity in the city compared to on the French side. We tend to think that the Francophone the Francophone side of things is homogenous. It isn't, but no. That's how we think about it. So in the play, I think the fact that you both sort of flow so easily between the two languages is really exciting. And is that hard? I mean, it's what's great about it. What I can say for the audience is that everything is always available in both languages. And so you don't ever, having seen the run throughs, you know, it's so thrilling because it's like when you dream like you can speak another language. It's it just sort of flows naturally. But how was that for you? Have you both done that before? Have you both worked in French and English on stage at the same time?
I don't think so. No. And basically, I think the way I tried to do it in the most organic way. Like when we speak to each other, we do switch naturally. Just like everybody who speaks many languages will tell you that there's always a switch. And so I tried to respect that, but also, of course, thinking there's going to be subtitles. So we have to help people here. So try to have chunks of text that stays in one language so people don't have to just keep going from us to the subtitles all the time to keep going. And also decide to leave certain things sometimes untranslated. So there is also this mystery, what exactly is being said here. We have access to most, but maybe not all, because, you know, we have to make like the audience member has to make their own effort as well. And that's a metaphor of meeting with the other. Everything cannot be pre-given to you. You have to also engage. So.
Yeah, I had never, I mean, this was the only time I've ever performed in French was during my first time around with Repercussion Theatre. We were doing a production of The Tempest. And that was my first time, and that summer we did it in French one night and in English the other. So we had to learn both versions of The Tempest, and
nice,
which was really cool. But yeah, that was since then I hadn't performed in French, and so that's been a real gift. And to get to speak both at the same time is probably the closest to how I navigate, how I communicate in my day-to-day. Laurence is absolutely right. When you speak, I think more than a language, you end up using both. And I think it's really clever the way we're using it in the show.
I think it's wonderful. I'm so excited by it. I think we're just getting to the time flies by so much when we do these, and we're just nearing the end. But I want to ask you one last question. Both of you, do you think that the two solitudes, that, you know, the French and English, this idea of these two separate communities split by a street, and cardinal directions, do you think they're starting to dissolve in Montreal? And is it a good thing? Like, is it just me and Sylvain getting this idea that we're going to collaborate?
No, I think that it is truly changing. And I mean, we see it in lots of different institutions and communities, maybe more than in theater, because theater is so language based. But for example, if we look at the arts, visual arts, dance, and like these communities are really, really mixing. And I think it's interesting also around theater to question our relationship to language and to start thinking outside the box when it comes to, okay, but what can we do to bring the different communities together and to make them feel represented? How can we speak about more than one community and kind of break that cultural mimesis that we often are looking for in the arts? And that is not necessarily serving us all the time. And I think that, I mean, Quebec has, because of its history, has needed to see themselves represented on stage. Francophones I'm speaking about, to solidify a sense of identity. But I think we're somewhere else now, and it's interesting to question those collective narratives, and to say, okay, like, what do we want the narratives to be for the future? Because everything is a narrative. And that's what Cyclorama is trying to do. And I can see the changes happening like every day. And I think it's really exciting.
It's fantastic. And for you, Antoine, what do you feel? is it something, having grown up in French but not feeling francophone, do you feel that now at least there's a shift that it allows you to be everything you are in the city?
I think there's always going to be it's two powerful forces moving against each other. It seems to me like, on the one hand, we are still hearing the same conversations about the protection of the French language in Quebec, and it feels like there's always going to be that sort of sense of preservation it needs to be protected, and the outside forces of the Anglo world are trying to infiltrate it, and it needs to be protected, and I think that's valid. But I do feel like, especially in big cities, that we're mostly past that. Maybe for the younger generations, this is a non-issue. I think one of the things that might, make one side fall in love with the other and fall in love with the other language is through the arts. And so one just has to keep hoping that the artistic communities can find a way to reach the other side, and make their way into their hearts somehow.
Oh. Yeah, if I can just surf on that, because I find it really beautiful. I think the heart, the falling in love with, is the solution to everything. I don't think that forcing something down someone's throat will ever work. I think that what we need to focus on is, how can we light the flame? It's more in that way that I see it. There is, of course, always a threat for any language that is in minority on the planet because of the internet, principally, which is just almost solely in English, and it's extremely difficult for some indigenous communities to keep their language alive because the youth is online and is losing their language so I think we just have to be empathetic towards that fact, and vigilant. But at the same time, for me, to learn languages doesn't mean that you're going to subtract your own. It's an addition of things. And if you can feel passionate about a lot of things, it's just a plus in your life.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a gorgeous thing. And I think that's a great way to talk about the inspiration for Cyclorama and for what you guys are creating. It's absolutely so thrilling and exciting, and I can't wait to share it with the audience. And I thank you so there's our beautiful picture there from and I want to reiterate that it is a collaboration between Centaur Theatre and Théâtre d'aujourd'hui, and the process too for us, even in the administration and having the chance to interact with Etienne and Sylvain and Annie and Howard, everybody, the whole crossover, it's a real complete crossover, which I think is what makes it so exciting for us, and for a great way to start a post-COVID world. Yay! Yay! Yes. So now, yes, post-COVID, that's the thing. So get your vaccine. Get a vaccine. Go get your shots. I want to thank you both so much for joining me today. It's such a pleasure to have a chance to. I miss you. I miss sitting down and talking to both of you. I really do. And what I saw in the workshop was so extraordinary. I can't wait to share it with the audience. So thank you for that. And here comes Cyclorama.
Yep.
Yay!
Catch you in 2021.
When it's warm again.
Thanks, Ida.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks, you guys.
Thank you. We here at Centaur, we are grateful for the support of Canada Life for our artistic diversity discussions, both like this and others that we've had through the salons. And I also want to thank our Saturday Salon online team, Vanessa Rigaud and Eloi Savoie, for helping to make this all possible. And most importantly, thank you for spending some time with us today. Even though this was our last salon for 2020, we have lots more things in store for 2021. So don't forget to check out the website, centaurtheatre.com, or better yet, sign up for the newsletter and you won't miss anything. The holiday is just around the corner, and all of us at Centaur want to wish you and your family a really happy, safe holiday full of joy. And so in order to do that, I want to encourage everyone to get out their holiday masks and have a great season. Happy Saturday.